Tessa's type 1 diabetes story is really similar to so many others that we've heard since her diagnosis. She was 12 years old when she was diagnosed. This was about a year and a half ago. She had just turned 12 in September and was diagnosed on November 5th. And all the things leading up to that were just signs that we had no idea about. And we're just really hoping that we can spread some awareness and education so that other people don't have to go through what Tessa did if they can pick up these signs ahead of time. Tessa had been sick with a virus at the around the time of her birthday, and she wasn't able to really fully get better after that. We had a couple things going around in our house. My older son had been diagnosed with mono, so later on in this story, when Tessa gets really tired and can't keep up and was really sluggish and all of those types of symptoms, like we thought maybe she has mono, maybe that's why she can't get better because she had this other virus and then mono. She started looking thinner, like she was losing weight, but she also was looking taller. So we thought she's having a growth spurt. She just turned 12. My husband's really tall. I'm short, but he's 6'4", and her two big brothers, she's got a little brother and two big brothers. Her two big brothers both had growth spurts around this age. And so we were just like, okay, that's probably what it is. And that might even be why she's tired. As the days went on, we just kind of noticed a couple of things that we noticed were that she seemed again tired. She seemed to be having a headache. She seemed like she couldn't she just wasn't herself. She seemed really discouraged and down. And that kind of concerned us because we didn't like seeing her like that. She's like a really happy kid and just kind of seemed really off. Tessa never had a lot of people have like they're vomiting a lot, and that's how sick they get. She didn't have that, but she did have a couple of times that she just sporadically threw up. One was a couple weeks before her diagnosis, and she's fearful of throwing up. So we were just like, whoa, are you all right? Like, is everything okay? It was really just so spontaneous. And it was after eating like a big meal. A couple hours later, again, now looking back, we probably can figure out why that happened. And then the other time that she threw up was just a couple few days before her diagnosis, and it was also like the day after Halloween. So again, just trying to figure it out. We were like, well, she had a bunch of Halloween candy. She usually eats pretty healthy. Maybe it just caused her to not feel well. And as much as my, spidey senses were kind of up in this situation, there was also so many reasons to say, like, don't be crazy. It's probably just this. It's probably just this. One of the things that I remember blaming all these symptoms on when you're trying to search for answers, I cleaned her Stanley cup, and it had in all the little crevices when I took it apart, it had like a little bit of mold. And I remember being like, oh my gosh, I wonder if like she's got some sort of mold sickness going on. Maybe that's what it is. She was diagnosed on a Sunday, and I was leaving on a Friday to go to a retreat with a couple of girlfriends. And I don't usually go away, especially on an overnight, and especially without at least one of my children. So it was kind of a big deal for me to go. And I didn't feel at this time that there was any reason for me to stay home. I honestly thought, you know what, maybe if I really think that she's not better by the end of the weekend, we'll stop at the urgent care on Sunday when I get back home, and we'll rule out mono. And maybe that's what it is. I do remember leaving the house thinking she looks different to me, and like unhealthy different, like something in her coloring, her eyes seem sunken. It was more than just, lost a couple pounds. It was more than just she's looking different as she gets older and growing. It was something like she seemed unwell, and I didn't know if it was serious or you're making a big deal of this. I think my concern level raised the most when my husband called me the next day on Saturday and said, I think that we should probably, something doesn't seem right with Tess. She seemed really down. She can't keep her eyes open. She had to come out of her soccer game. She couldn't finish it. She's sleeping whenever she can. She looks like she's lost weight. Now, all of this stuff I had been thinking, but I didn't want to alarm anyone because I thought I might have been in my head overreacting. So now that I heard my husband say it, who doesn't typically get alarmed by this stuff, it really raised my concern level. I almost came home. I asked my husband, do you think I should just come home right now? And he said, no, this doesn't seem like an emergency. She doesn't have a fever. Just come home tomorrow morning when you're planning on coming home, and we'll decide what we're going to do then. The next morning he calls me, and I'm driving home, and he says, she's She's having a hard time waking up. I'm just gonna let her sleep. She's probably exhausted. If she does have mono, she's probably so sluggish. And I said, you know what? Why don't you wake her up and get her ready? Let's take her to the urgent care when I get there. And when she woke up, she couldn't even get on the phone to talk to me, which I found to be really strange. She's kind of a mama's girl, and I just was shocked that she didn't want to talk to me. And it wasn't that she didn't want to, it was almost that she couldn't. She didn't have the energy to. When I walked in the door, she looked like a completely different child to me. And I couldn't believe my eyes. It honestly looked like she was about to take her very last breath. It was the most scary thing as a parent I had ever seen in any of my children. This wasn't like oh, you don't look well, you look like you need, an antibiotic. This was more. And I think that because I hadn't been home over the weekend, it was such a severe contrast where my husband maybe didn't notice it as much because he was with her that whole time. But I said, we're not going to urgent care to test for mono. We're going to the hospital, to the ER right now. Her ear had been bothering her since she had been sick, and she did complain that it was hurting that night. So when we got to the ER and they checked us in and they asked about her pain, it wasn't really that she was in pain, but she did say, "But my ear hurts." So when the practitioner checked her, I was trying to make sure like they knew she looks different. This is not what she typically appears, what she normally looks like. And the practitioner, it wasn't a doctor, I think it was a physician's assistant, and she said, I smell a smell on her breath, which in hindsight now we look back, we know it was the fruity breath, but even the doctor, the physician's assistant, didn't even realize that's what it was. She actually thought it was the smell of a fever. She said I my kids have a smell when they have a fever, and it smells just like this. I bet you she's brewing a fever. She's probably brewing an infection. And something in me was like, I just think it's more than that. Could you just run all the blood work possible? And they were really good about that. They did. When the doctor left, the nurse said to me, I said to the nurse, I go, I don't know if I've made it clear and said some of these symptoms again. And she goes, you know what? I'm just going to run her urine. And it was her that sort of, the antennas went up with diabetes, and sure enough, she was right. The doctor came back and said, I think we're your daughter might have type 1 diabetes. She pulled me out in the hallway, and I was shocked. I remember looking it up on my phone as they left the room and said, we're waiting for the results. And diabetic ketoacidosis came up, and I just thought, no, this can't be it. This isn't it. We don't fall in this category. We don't have anyone with diabetes in our family. And it's just so crazy that it ended up being that. It was really overwhelming when they told us she was in diabetic ketoacidosis, and I had just read that it was life-threatening. And another doctor came in that was the head of whatever was happening at that hospital that night and said, we have to either airlift her or send her by ambulance, but she is going to be okay. To Mass General Hospital. We live in New Hampshire, so she got an ambulance ride. She wanted an airlift, but she got an ambulance ride. And, it was very emotional. I was trying really hard to stay strong for her, but I was secretly running off into the bathroom crying, having my husband call our family and friends, him going home, getting bags packed. And they were saying, like, pack your bags. You're not going to be home for a few days at least. Tessa, I don't think cried one tear. That girl is, as many T1Ders are, so unbelievably tough and brave. She was so dehydrated that they couldn't get blood from her veins, and they had to use an ultrasound to come in and get it done. The nurses couldn't do it, so a doctor had to come in and do it. And I mean, she just was so strong and so brave during the whole entire thing. Meanwhile, mom and dad are trying not to let her see us crying because we're so proud of her, but we're also just so worried for her, and we just can't believe our lives are about to change, and we were so uneducated on this disease. The next few days were spent in the hospital, a day or two in the PICU, and then the rest of the time was just complete diabetes education and coming home honestly feeling like we had a newborn baby, but even just more difficult, to be quite honest. And really, really overwhelming. So that's her diagnosis story. And we hope to share just so many more things along the way, and hope to just help other people know what some of these signs and symptoms are, so you can avoid this situation that we were in and catch it before it's in a life-threatening situation.